Chris Watts isn't just a murderer, he became an internet phenomenon. But why? This wasn't just another crime story. The internet couldn't stop dissecting every detail, every word, every movement. But why this case? How did a man who did the unthinkable become one of the most talked about criminals online? Today, we're diving into how social media, online detectives, and digital obsession turned this case into something much bigger than anyone expected. From viral theories to online conspiracies, the internet's obsession with Chris Watts went far beyond the crime itself. But, did it go too far? At the end of this video, we will reveal one more shocking revelation. One that proves the internet's obsession with Chris Watts isn't fading, it's growing. Let's uncover the full story of how the internet turned this crime into an obsession. It started like any other missing persons case. A husband reports his pregnant wife and 2 daughters missing. A small Colorado town, shaken but hopeful. A father pleading on TV for their safe return. But behind the cameras, behind the carefully rehearsed words, something felt off. Sean and Watts had just returned home from a business trip. Then, she was gone. Her 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste? Gone too. And Chris Watts? He looked like a heartbroken father, a concerned husband. But his body language, his words, they told a different story. The world watched as Chris stood in front of cameras, asking for their return. But something was wrong. He wasn't crying. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't acting like a man who had just lost his family. And the internet, well, they noticed. Before the police even made their move, true crime communities on YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook were already breaking down his every word, every blink, every nervous tick. They asked, why does he cross his arms when he talks? Why does he smile when he says he just wants them home? Then, police found what the internet already suspected: Chris Watts was lying. His stories didn't add up. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera caught something chilling: Chris loading his truck in the dead of night. But where was he going? And what was he carrying? Investigators pressured him. His story crumbled. And then came the confession. A story so shocking, so horrifying, that it gripped the world. Chris admitted to the unthinkable. He had strangled Sean. He had smothered his daughters. And then, as if disposing of trash, he dumped their bodies at an oil site where he worked. The world recoiled in horror. But the internet? The internet was just getting started. Why this case? Why did this story explode across the internet in ways others didn't? Was it the footage? The interviews? Or was it something darker about the way we consume true crime? This was more than just a crime. It became an obsession. Why did the internet latch onto Chris Watts like no other criminal before him? And is this level of attention dangerous? Is it justice, or just morbid curiosity? Let's find out. What happens when a crime isn't just reported, but dissected by millions? When everyday people become detectives, analyzing every second, every breath, every blink? The Chris Watts case didn't just make headlines, it became an internet sensation. Within days of Chris Watts' arrest, the internet was flooded with theories, breakdowns, and amateur investigations. Crime YouTubers posted hour-long analyses. TikTok users reenacted chilling moments. Reddit threads stretched into thousands of comments. And everyone had one goal: to figure out the truth. This wasn't just the work of professionals. It was everyday people, true crime enthusiasts, body language experts, even those with no experience at all, examining every frame of Chris Watts' interviews. They pointed out his crossed arms, his forced smile, the way his voice cracked when he mentioned his daughters. But was this a search for justice, or something else? Then came the body cam footage. This was different. It wasn't a news report, it was raw. It was unedited. The internet had never seen a suspect move, talk, and react in real time like this. And in an instant, millions became obsessed. Every gesture, every pause, nothing went unnoticed. But here's the real question, was the internet helping? Were these discoveries bringing the truth to light, or were people just reading too much into it? Could the obsession with every small detail actually distort reality? Even years later, new theories kept emerging. More people were watching, more questions were asked, and the case refused to fade from the spotlight. The internet didn't just keep the story alive, it transformed it. At what point does curiosity turn into obsession? When does analyzing a crime become exploiting it? The internet blurred that line. People weren't just following updates, they were living inside the case. But did all this attention actually help, or did it create something dangerous? Not all attention is harmless. Some fans became fixated, treating the case like an ongoing TV show. Some even sympathized with Chris Watts. And some went even further. Believe it or not, some people didn't hate Chris Watts. They admired him. They sent him letters. They defended him. They romanticized a cold-blooded killer. But why? Some psychologists say it's human nature. We're drawn to danger. We want to understand the why behind the unimaginable. But in the digital age, that curiosity can spiral into something far darker. And that's exactly what happened. The internet did expose Chris Watts' lies. But it also turned him into something he never should have been, a figure of obsession. So, where do we draw the line? And when does our fascination become just as disturbing as the crime itself? What if Chris Watts didn't act alone? What if there was more to this case than the police ever revealed? The internet didn't just analyze the crime, it rewrote it. And soon, the story spun completely out of control. At first, people were just looking for clues. But soon, that curiosity turned into doubt. Did Chris Watts really act alone? Was his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, hiding something? And could there be more to this case than even the police knew? Internet sleuths obsessed over Nicole Kessinger. Some believed she knew about the murders before they happened. Others claimed she was more than just a mistress. They dissected her body language, questioned her search history, and even accused her of helping Chris Watts cover up the crime. But here's the problem, there was no proof. Police investigated Nicole Kessinger and found nothing linking her to the crime. Still, the internet refused to let it go. And as the theories grew wilder, the case turned into something unrecognizable. Soon, people weren't just questioning Chris Watts. They were rewriting everything. Some even blamed Shaun Watts, claiming she was controlling, difficult, or even responsible for her own fate. And others suggested something even darker. Some internet detectives claimed Chris Watts' daughters weren't murdered at home, that they were still alive when he drove them to the oil site. Their proof? A single blurry video of what looked like a small shadow moving near his truck. That was all it took for people to rewrite the entire case. But here's the question, was this justice, or chaos? Was the internet uncovering the truth, or creating a completely new version of reality? And at what point does investigating turn into dangerous obsession? Some theories were just speculation. But others? They turned dangerous. People harassed Nicole Kessinger. They threatened anyone who defended her. And some even sent death threats to strangers who dared to say she wasn't involved. The internet wasn't just discussing the case, it was destroying lives. So why do people believe in conspiracies, even when there's no evidence? Studies show that our brains crave explanations. We need things to make sense. And when reality feels incomplete, we fill in the blanks, even if it means creating stories that aren't true. In the age of social media, anything can go viral. Theories spread like wildfire. Misinformation becomes fact. And soon, what started as curiosity turns into something far more dangerous. But how much damage has already been done? This case should have been about truth, but did the internet twist it into something else? Did online detectives uncover real evidence, or did they just create a never-ending mystery? And most importantly, did we cross a line we can't come back from? He murdered his wife and children. He confessed. He's serving a life sentence. But somehow, he still has fans? Chris Watts didn't just become infamous, he became a cult figure. And what's even more disturbing? He's not the first. Somehow, even after committing one of the most horrific crimes imaginable, Chris Watts has supporters. Online forums, Facebook groups, even fan pages, all filled with people who sympathize with him, defend him, and in some cases, even love him. Thousands of letters. Some from people who want to marry him. Others from women who say they understand him. And even more claiming he was pressured into confessing. But why? Why do some people idolize killers? Some of his fans believe he was set up. That his confession was forced. That he was a good man who just made a tragic mistake. But this isn't just about Chris Watts. There's a pattern, and it's been happening for decades. Chris Watts is just the latest name on a long list. Ted Bundy had women lining up at his trial. Jeffrey Dahmer received love letters in prison. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had multiple marriage proposals. But what really drives this obsession? Experts call it hybristophilia, a condition where people are sexually or emotionally attracted to dangerous criminals. Some see killers as misunderstood. Others are drawn to the thrill of loving someone forbidden. But could there be an even darker reason? For some, it's about control. Loving a killer in prison means they can't leave you, can't hurt you. For others, it's about the fantasy, believing they can fix someone beyond saving. But are these just isolated cases, or is society feeding into this obsession? True crime isn't just news anymore, it's entertainment. Documentaries, TV shows, books, podcasts. The more we watch, the more we consume, the more killers like Watts become celebrities. But is this just human nature, or are we crossing a line? When does true crime interest turn into killer worship? Is it okay to be curious about murderers, or does consuming their stories give them power? And most importantly, why do we, as a society, keep turning criminals into icons? There's a fine line between understanding a crime and idolizing the criminal. But have we already crossed that line? And if we have, can we ever go back? Chris Watts isn't just a criminal, he's a case study in how the internet, media, and human psychology turn killers into something else entirely. But what does that say about us? And more importantly, what happens next? Before we end this deep dive, there's one more shocking revelation. One that proves the internet's obsession with Chris Watts isn't fading, it's growing. Even now, years after his conviction, Watts still receives letters. Some from admirers, others from people begging for answers. Gifts. Money. Even marriage proposals. But why? What is it about this man that keeps people hooked? Is this just morbid curiosity, or is it something darker? Are we fascinated by crime because we fear it? Or is there something about Chris Watts specifically that makes him impossible to forget? Chris Watts isn't just a criminal anymore. He's a cultural phenomenon. And that raises a question we need to answer. Are we learning from true crime, or are we glorifying it? Is true crime meant to educate us, or entertain us? And more importantly, when does our interest in a criminal turn into something dangerous? Now it's your turn. Why do you think Chris Watts became an internet obsession? Is it human nature, or is there something deeper at play? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you found this deep dive eye-opening, hit that subscribe button. We cover the darkest cases, the biggest mysteries, and the truths most people ignore. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.